In the world of Game of Thrones, we are all familiar with the classic trial by combat. A guy gets accused of a crime, he says he didn't do it, and instead of a lawyer and a jury, he asks for a giant man with an even bigger sword to bash someone's head in to prove he is innocent. It is efficient, it is bloody, and it usually ends with someone's eyes being pushed into their skull. But there is a version of this legal system that is even more chaotic, more rare, and significantly more lethal. It is called the trial by seven. If you think a regular trial by combat is intense, imagine multiplying that stress by 7. The trial by 7 is not just a duel. It is a full-on team deathmatch rooted in the religious history of Westeros. To understand how this works, we have to look at the faith of the Seven. The Andals, who brought the Seven to Westeros thousands of years ago, believed that their gods were very busy people who loved a good fight. They believed that if 7 champions fought on each side, the gods would be so honored by the symmetry that they would personally descend into the arena and make sure the right person won. It is basically the Westerosi version of a holy 7 versus 7 lobby. The rules are simple but brutal. The accuser finds 7 champions and the accused finds 7 champions. If the accused person cannot find 6 friends to die for them, they are automatically guilty. No excuses, no extensions. If they do find their team, everyone meets in the middle of a field and starts hacking away at each other until one side is completely dead or yields. This is extremely rare because honestly, finding 6 people willing to get their limbs chopped off for your legal problems is a tough sell. In the entire 300-year history of the Targaryen dynasty, this has only happened twice. A third one almost happened in the original Game of Thrones series, but the swift intervention of the king saved the day. Usually when a person is accused of a crime, they just pick a single champion like Bronn or the Mountain and call it a day. But when the honor of the gods or the crown is involved, someone might get fancy and demand a trial by 7. Now let's take a look at the first trial of the 7. The first time we saw this during the Targaryen reign was during the reign of Maegor the Cruel. Maegor was exactly what his name suggests. He was a terrifying guy who rode Balerion the Black Dread and generally solved his problems by burning them. When he took the throne, the faith of the 7 was not happy about it. They did not like his marriages, and they did not like his face. When he arrived in King's Landing to claim his crown, a knight named Daemon Moragan, who led the warriors' sons, challenged his right to rule. Maegor did not call for a lawyer. He just pulled out his Valyrian steel sword, Blackfire, and said they would decide the matter with blood. This was a trial by 7 for the highest stakes possible, the Iron Throne itself. It was Maegor and his 6 champions against 7 of the most elite holy knights in the realm. The fight was a total bloodbath. On Maegor's side, he had knights like Ser Dickon Flowers and Ser Lucien Corbray. On the other side were the most devout warriors of the faith. The battle was a mess of steel and screams. People were getting disemboweled, horses were screaming, and by the end, only one man was left standing. That man was Maegor. He won, but just barely. Right after the last opponent died, Maegor collapsed because someone had smashed a mace into his head so hard it cracked his helmet. He was in a coma for 30 days, but because he was the last one breathing, the gods supposedly said he was the rightful king. When he woke up, the first thing he did was hop on his dragon and burn the Sept of Remembrance, which really showed how much he appreciated the will of the gods. Now, if you want to see a trial by 7 that actually feels personal and heartbreaking, we have to go forward in time to the story of Duncan the Tall, which is the focus of the series A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. This is where we see the most famous trial by 7 in the lore. Dunk was just a giant, poor hedge knight trying to do the right thing. He saw a royal prince, Aerion Targaryen, being a complete jerk to a puppeteer girl and decided to punch the prince in the face. In Westeros, hitting a royal is usually a one-way ticket to the executioner, but Dunk demanded a trial by combat. The problem was that Aerion Targaryen was a petty, cruel lunatic. He did not want a one-on-one fight. He demanded a trial by 7. He knew that Dunk was a nobody with no money and no noble friends. He figured Dunk would never find 6 knights to fight for him, meaning he would be executed without a drop of royal sweat being spilled. It was a rigged game from the start. Dunk had to wander the tourney grounds at Ashford Meadow, practically begging people to risk their lives for him. It was a miserable sight. He was a man who barely had enough money for his own armor, trying to convince highborn knights to fight against 3 royal princes and 3 members of the Kingsguard. For a long time, it looked like he was going to die. But this is where the story gets legendary. Dunk actually managed to find people who believed in him. He got the support of Sir Lionel Baratheon, known as the Laughing Storm, who was one of the most fearsome warriors of his age. Lionel joined because he basically thought it would be funny to hit a prince. Then he got the support of 2 knights named Humphrey, Sir Humphrey Harding and Sir Humphrey Beesbury. Biggest shocker came when the Crown Prince himself, Baelor Breakspear, stepped in to be the 7th man. Baelor was the heir to the throne, the hand of the king, and the coolest guy in the 7 kingdoms. He decided to fight for a random hedge knight because he knew Dunk was right. This was a massive political scandal. Imagine the future king putting on armor to fight against his own brother, Prince Maegor, and his two nephews. The drama was off the charts. Before the fight even started, there was another twist. One of Dunk's supposed friends, Ser Steffon Fossaway, betrayed him at the last second. Steffon had promised to fight for Dunk, but Aerion Targaryen offered him a lordship to switch sides. Dunk was left one man short again, until Raymond Fossaway, Steffon's squire and cousin, got so angry at the betrayal that he asked Sir Lionel to knight him on the spot. Raymond painted his house's apple sigil green to show he was a green apple, who was not yet rotten like his cousin. This is how the green apple Fossaways were born. The battle itself was a muddy, loud, terrifying scramble. Unlike Maegor's trial, which was a professional slaughter, this one was filled with family drama and chaos. You had brothers fighting brothers and fathers fighting sons. Prince Maegor Targaryen was on the side of his shitty son Aerion, which meant he was technically fighting his own brother, Baelor. The description of the fight in the books is incredible. It was fought on horseback with lances first, then moved to the ground with swords, axes, and maces. Dunk, who was not the most skilled knight but was definitely the biggest, ended up tackling Prince Aerion into the dirt. Dunk was not using fancy swordplay, he was using his size and his reach. He literally wrestled the prince into the mud and started beating him until Aerion yielded. Because the main accuser yielded, the trial was over. Dunk was innocent. But victory in Westeros always comes with a bill you cannot afford. After the fight, Prince Baelor started to take off his helmet. He was joking around, telling everyone they fought well, but then he realized his head felt a bit soft. It turns out his own brother Maegor had hit him in the back of the head with a mace during the fight. As Baelor pulled his helmet off, part of his skull came with it, and he died right there in the mud. The best man in the realm died to save a hedge knight. It is one of the most emotional moments in the entire A Song of Ice and Fire series, because it changed the course of history forever. The detail of Baelor's death is especially poignant when you realize he was wearing his son's armor because his own was too far away. The armor didn't fit him perfectly, which is why the blow to the head was so devastating. It's those small human mistakes that led to the biggest changes in history. A slightly loose helmet changed the fate of a continent. That is the kind of storytelling that makes this universe so special. If Baelor had not died in that trial by 7, the Mad King probably never would have happened. Baelor was the kind of leader who could have kept the Targaryen dynasty together for centuries. Instead, his death led to a series of tragedies that eventually put the Mad King on the throne and caused the end of the dragons. Dunk lived the rest of his life wondering if he was worth it. He felt like a foot was worth the life of a prince. But the gods, or at least the writers, had bigger plans for him. He eventually became the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard and one of the most legendary heroes in history. By saving Dunk, they ensured that Egg, the little boy who was Dunk's squire, would eventually become King Aegon V. Egg was one of the few kings who actually cared about the small folk, and he learned those lessons by traveling with Dunk. In the Game of Thrones TV show, we almost saw another trial by 7. When Cersei Lannister was facing her trial with the High Sparrow, there were a lot of rumors and theories that she would be forced into a trial by 7. The High Sparrow was a religious fanatic, and the trial by 7 is the ultimate religious legal move. Fans were hopping for a Clegane Bowl situation where 7 champions would face off. In the books, Cersei has a mysterious champion named Sir Robert Strong, who is basically the reanimated corpse of the mountain. The theory was that the High Sparrow would name 7 champions of the faith to take him down. But in the show, King Tommen ruined the fun by banning trial by combat altogether. Cersei's response to having her legal rights taken away was, as we know, blowing up the entire courthouse with green fire. It was less godly intervention and more a massive act of terrorism, but it worked for her. It is a shame we never got to see it on screen, because a modern budget trial by 7 would have been the most insane action sequence in the history of the show. It is the most extreme form of justice in a world that does not have much of it. The trial by 7 is essentially the final boss of the Westerosi legal system. It is so dangerous and so costly that most people avoid it at all costs. Think about it. If you are a lord and you get accused of something, why would you risk 6 of your best knights and your own life in a chaotic 14-man brawl when you could just hire one really good sellsword to do the job for you? When you look at the names of the people who died in these trials, it is a list of the elite. In Maegor's trial, all 12 of the other knights died. These were some of the finest warriors in the 7 kingdoms, wiped out in a single afternoon. In the Ashford trial, 2 of the greatest knights of the Reach, the Humphreys, were killed, and the heir to the throne was lost. The will of the gods seems to have a very high price tag. Even the survivors usually come out of it broken. Prince Maegor, who dealt the blow to Baelor, lived the rest of his life in a shadow of guilt. He eventually became king himself, but he was always known as a grim and harsh man, haunted by the fact that he accidentally killed the brother he loved. By the time we get to the main Game of Thrones story, this brutal tradition is mostly gone, replaced by the cynicism of characters like Cersei and Littlefinger. If you made it this far, you are officially more prepared for a Westerosi courtroom than most lords in the Seven Kingdoms. Hopefully, you never find yourself needing to recruit 6 friends to die for your honor, but if you do, let us know in the comments which characters you would pick to be on your team of 7. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the most brutal legal tradition in fantasy history, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells the algorithm that people actually want to see more of this lore. For more deep dives into the world of ice and fire and the history of the Targaryens, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more stories to tell, and you don't want to miss the next one. Click that notification bell so you are the first to know when we drop a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.